don't know. It's hard to really say anything at this point. I feel like this happens at every international tournament that I play in, and it's hard to really understand what to do.
All right, man. So for context, the Factor had an interview beforehand, so if you're expecting tears, this is not the place. He's had a little bit of time to cool off and cry in the back where no one saw.
Yep.
How do you feel? How do you feel after that series?
I mean, I'm sad that I felt like, especially for game 2, I felt like if I just played better, that the game would have just been a free win, to be honest. And there's like a million different things that are going through my brain that I could have done better. And just feel really scattered, to be honest. Like my mind is really scattered. I'm just thinking about a million different things, and I mean it's the same feeling when losing every single time. It doesn't really get it doesn't really get better when you lose. It doesn't feel less painful.
Game 2 is the Renekton?
Game 2 is the Renekton game versus Jax, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jax just being traded back and forth.
Right. Jax and Rumble.
Yeah. Game 3, when do you feel like there was a moment that you guys were like, oh shit, we're on the back foot, we're the one behind?
It was on the third dragon fight. The third dragon fight where we like overcommitted onto Aphelios. We chased into Aphelios from Rumble, and then they were able to just kill us all. Basically like 5-for-3 or something, 5-for-2 maybe.
Yeah.
And then after that, we just didn't have teleports. They could just rush Baron. We don't really have a way to stop it, to be honest. They just win 5v5 at that point because Aphelios is too strong. And yeah, I mean, we were in a winning position, I would say, on the third dragon fight. We would have easily gotten that dragon after the initial part of the fight. I think we just chased way too far in, and we had Xayah, and they couldn't really walk through the choke. And that like team fight mistake sort of just turned the game around for them. Obviously, there were a million other mistakes we made in the game.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a turning point.
I like to ask that question, right? Because, you know, I think if we played everything out perfectly, then you would win perfectly. Mm-hmm. But in reality, there's always those moments.
Right.
In game 2, it felt like y'all were, again, uncharacteristically on different pages during team fights. Was that something that you felt was happening at Worlds? Was that something you felt just in this series?
I mean, I think team fighting has been harder for us at international tournaments in general. I mean, obviously the teams are just a lot better at team fighting over here. They're a lot sharper. They understand their comps a lot better. I mean, it never really was a big problem for us in NA. We were definitely a lot better at most NA teams in team fighting, but we made a lot of really random like bad skirmishes. I think like the Renekton game, for example, when we lost at Crab at level 3, I think I like misplayed that fight quite hard. And there's just a million like getting caught randomly that happened a bunch during the series. And I think that getting caught is definitely like a mistake that we made so many times in scrims. And honestly, if you watch our scrim games and you watch our stage games, in terms of getting caught, I think that mistake is the most, like you can see it coming based off scrims, like that happening on stage, just because just weren't really that disciplined. We'd always try to like step up a bit too far and try to push for advantages where we can't overforce things. And I think that was definitely a big part of why we lost today, was just randomly dying on timers that just weren't ours. It was their timers, and we try to force things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, in my interview with M&S, I mean, he already talked about the Elder Dragon one. I mean, beforehand, Sven was getting caught out a lot, you know, around Drake, so that seemed to be a theme. Interesting that it's something that was happening over and over again during scrims. When you take back a look at this year's Worlds, what did you learn? What is the big thing you learned about yourself? I know I always ask you that, and you take a decent amount of time to answer, but, you know, what do you feel like it's been?
For me, this Worlds has been a little bit different from other ones where I didn't really feel like I was as uncomfortable in terms of laning. Yeah. Just because a lot of the champions in top lane were very similar from Summer Split going into Worlds.
Yep.
Like it was pretty much the same meta of like Sante, Jax, Renekton, Rumble. All these champions were pretty popular before and during the split, so I felt like a lot of my weaknesses were not in laning this time, whereas in previous tournaments they were. It was more so planning with my team in mid game on what we should do in the game. It felt like our mid games were very like, we were definitely on a different page a lot of the time during mid games. I think all of our players have a lot of ideas about what we should do in mid game, and it's hard to stick with one decision because one person says a plan and the other person sees a problem with that plan, which might even be true, but there's just a lot of voices on our team. And I think
that led to indecision.
It definitely leads to indecision, and lots of our team's like whole play style as a team is very, very aggressive and trying to force plays a lot, trying to outplay them a lot. I think for me, it's mainly my discipline. I think got a little bit worse. I think I've not been as disciplined as I was in previous years, and I think I definitely was a little bit more free with my gameplay, you could say, which can lead to good games, but can also lead to bad games, like the Renekton game, for example.
Sure.
And for me, I think the discipline as a player led to a lot of my stability in top, and I think that allowed me to play situations a lot more and think a lot more cleanly around the game, which I think was the biggest thing I was lacking in this tournament. I died to a lot of random ganks, a lot of random timers from their team, and I wasn't really respecting it as much as I used to.
You think it's because you're more confident as a player?
I would say I'm definitely over the past year, I've been a lot more willing to make mistakes. Willing to make mistakes, and I think when you're more willing to make mistakes, you play just way more aggressive. To be honest, you don't take the safe plays as much.
Yeah.
And that leads to more mistakes. It leads to more games where you play well, like the Rumble game, for example. It leads to also more mistakes, like the Renekton game.
Time's up for the interview, y'all. Otherwise, we'd keep going for another 5 minutes because he's okay. Final words for fans?
I mean, I wish we could have played. I wish we could have just played as well as we felt like we were playing in scrims. To be honest, we were just not playing. We were just way more stressed on stage, and I'm sorry to the fans that we're just playing such lack of discipline. To be honest, and I don't know. It's hard to really say anything at this point. I feel like this happens at every international tournament that I play in, and it's hard to really understand what to do as a player. And I understand the fans are frustrated as well. But even as a player, it's hard to move forward and know exactly what you should be changing to be able to do better. And I felt like we tried our best at this tournament. We definitely improved a lot throughout the boot camp, but it wasn't enough.
Well, as much as fans get frustrated or whatever, it really, no one gets more disappointed than y'all. So definitely, the fact that you acknowledge that fans get frustrated is great, but, we all know how much, you put into it and how much you feel, and, come back every year. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate your time. Go back with the team and, decompress and have a long off season to, think about things, learn, and prepare for another year.
Yeah.
Cheers, brother.
Good.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.